It's like, what were you doing with my drapes? The drapes that were hanging in the apartment. I never got the answer to that. Hi, this is Kari from Sky Properties, and today we're going to talk about the 2 worst people you can hire for property management. In a bad economy, there are usually 2 people that decide that they want to do property management for a living, and it's usually accountants and real estate agents. I can tell you from experience taking over from one or both of those 2 individuals that it's usually something really bad that happens where I get that account, and it's because they don't completely understand the laws, or they get themselves back into a corner they don't know how to get out of. Your accountant is really great at doing the numbers and keeping track of the numbers as far as through cash flows and general ledgers. However, in reality, they have no experience renting apartments or dealing with huge problems. There were 2 properties that I took over from an accountant in Beverly Hills, and what had happened at that property was there was a leak, and of course he called a plumber, which was the right thing to do. But what he didn't know to do was to make sure that there was no water damage inside the walls. So there was a growth of mold that wasn't taken care of, and that grew into a $20,000 repair bill from a contractor and another $20,000 in hotel room stays for putting that tenant up in a hotel room where they fixed the damage from just a small water leak. It made the owners see that having someone who runs numbers wasn't the same as having a property manager. The other accountant that I took over from just did not realize the number of calls that were going to come in from a small apartment building. The amount of calls that he got and the amount of troublesome things that happened were things that he had no experience in and wasn't used to multitasking for what he thought would be just a small job. Taking care of numbers ended up being a really big job of having to interact with tenants and vendors and the owner and possibly attorneys and all kinds of other people, and he's not really set up to do that. The other wrong person to hire is your real estate agent. Many agents become property managers when the economy is down and sales are low, and suddenly they're property managers, but without the experience and the knowledge behind what it takes to run a property. So they know how to sell it, so they're probably good at leasing or renting the apartment, and even could be brainstorming on ideas to rent the apartment, which would keep the income up, but then how to control the expenses and how to handle all the tenant phone calls and what emergency numbers to set up. All those things are things he really doesn't have experience with. So a real estate agent may know sales, but they don't know maintenance, they don't know management, and they don't know accounting. So before I owned my own company, I worked for another company, and a sales guy came in and started making promises to potential clients about what we could do for them. And in reality, they sounded good in theory, but weren't things that we could actually do without any cash flow. He didn't quite understand how it worked. He thought that we could come in and make all these changes that would get the property ready for rent, but these owners were in such a tight cash flow issue that they were kind of gridlocked. They couldn't spend the money to fix up the units, which would bring in tenants. You couldn't get them in there to begin with because there was no funds to fix up the property. So I think many real estate agents can make promises based on what they think property management is, but there's a whole nother reality once you start actually managing property.